Isn't it glorious? Karlach's fury is a wonder to behold.
Karlach's all fire and fury. I pray to the Triad it doesn't consume her.
Karlach's temper is a sight to behold. She'll need to be careful. That rage will burn her right out.
And with that, welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3. My name is Pete, and today we complete another episode of this Honor Mode walkthrough with our Dark Urge Halfling Bard, Sylvia Hairyfoot. Last time we left off after entering the Risen Road, where within the remains of a gnoll attack, we discovered a toll house inside the Paladins of Tyr and their leader Anders, a group searching for Karlach, much like Wyll. Now, we found Karlach shortly after, but she was not the devil we were told she'd be, so we recruited her to our party and helped her take out the Paladins of Tyr, who were in fact servants of the Archdevil Zariel that Karlach is trying to get away from. Today we begin with some light exploring. Heading in a rough southwestern direction, we can pick an autumn crocus as well as some dagger root near the entrance of what looks to be a small cave. There are some wooden structures here that have clearly seen better days. For now though, we won't explore it. Instead, let's just grab the bottle of spirit and then keep moving. There are some steps in the rock face here that we could use, but instead we go straight west, passing underneath the bridge that we crossed last episode.
Something over there.
Here, Lae'zel succeeds on what I think is a rather difficult survival check. Had she failed too, we could have brought Shadowheart back in. With enhanced ability, she should have had a decent chance of spotting the buried treasure here. That treasure then contains some valuables, including 2 bottles of dye, but nothing that would help us in combat. So let's keep going, loop around the corner and continue westwards.
So, Githyanki undergarments. Very fashionable.
The underharnesses are often used for strapping oneself onto a red dragon.
Fashion and function. You lot really have it all figured out.
After an enlightening conversation between Karlach and Lae'zel, we then come across the remains of another fight.
Something tore right through these people. They didn't stand a chance.
And indeed, no human is left alive in the area, but several hyenas lie on the ground. Let's approach to find out more.
The creature's eyes roll back in its head, equal parts bliss and agony. Her awful smell irresistible. And while her blood feast has filled her, the hyena is not yet sated.
Come, see, my flesh becomes new flesh.
You hear what comes next before you see it. The sharp snapping of bones and a yelp of pain as her body starts to twist and undulate. You watch with cold realization. This isn't the end of one life, but the start of another. Her darling pups will not be of her own species. Gnolls bring forth their iniquitous litter from many corpsed wombs, including hyenas.
Right, succeeding on the Arcana check here reveals that the best course of action is indeed the one that would suit a Dark Urge best, ending the hyena's life swiftly to avoid the birth of a dangerous gnoll. All the regular attack roll modifiers apply here, and we get advantage since the hyena is prone.
You land a swift strike against her skull. She yelps, then goes still. Whatever horrific creature was growing inside the hyena dies along with her.
And there we go, time to fight. There's only one hyena in this group that is not bloated, and it will always run away on its first turn. We don't want to let it escape though. The other animals are all bloated like the one we just killed. If we leave them alive for too long, they will birth gnolls, and we certainly do not want that. Luckily for now, they are all prone and can't take actions, so the fight should not be too difficult. Shovel starts us off with a claw attack, followed by Karlach, who can first of all go into a frenzy and then throw a javelin at the escaping hyena. That deals 14 points of damage, thanks to the Tavern Brawler feat applying her strength modifier twice to the damage roll. That, plus the 2 extra damage from raging, ensures that she deals at least 11 points with a single attack, one of the highest minimum damage outputs in our party at the moment. Let's follow things up with Sylvia, who can take a bonus action offhand shot at the target, and that finishes it off. We continue with Astarion, who uses his first bonus action to cast Hunter's Mark on the bloated hyena furthest in the back, followed by a sneak attack. No hiding necessary, the prone condition already gives advantage, unlike in regular D&D by the way, where ranged attacks against prone creatures always have disadvantage. In our case though, we gladly take it to defeat another foe and use his second bonus action to stab the hyena right in front of Astarion. Then we bring it back to Sylvia, who still has an action left. Let's use it to shoot the one animal that still hasn't taken any damage.
One beast's broken away, and it won't be returning alone.
This, of course, a reference to the hyena that tried to escape. It was in fact doing so with a purpose, more on that later. With Lae'zel, we can now strike with a menacing attack, and that takes care of all but the last enemy. That one still can't act, so we get a full turn. Nothing too difficult here. A sneak attack from Astarion finishes the job.
Have you seen that before? It certainly puts the miracle of birth in a new light.
We should find the rest. Stop the infestation before it spreads.
And indeed, from what we've seen so far, gnolls are likely present all throughout the area, so we should remain cautious. For the time being, we won't stray too far anyway though, as we have plenty of looting to do. I'll try to keep this brief. Of course, the hyenas as well as the dead gnoll all carry hyena ears, valuable ingredients in the crafting of speed potions. There are also 2 letters to be found near the broken wagon. One a pamphlet from the keepers of the gate, who want to protect the city of Baldur's Gate against outsiders. The other a writing from the Church of Oakmar, who ask Faerun citizens to refrain from sending in their own fortune-tellings to help their divine. Retracing our steps a bit, we find a second broken-down cart with plenty of vegetables scattered around it, valuable camp supplies. A bit more can also be found near the other wagon on the other side of the road. From the body of the dead human here, we can then loot plenty more, as well as their shipment orders, signed by NF, and making it very clear that a certain chest needs to be delivered unopened, otherwise death is swift to follow. That chest, however, is nowhere to be found around here. Instead, we can only help ourselves to more of the remains scattered around, as well as to the contents of a barrel with some useful oils in it. Another mangled corpse then carries a few valuables, and as we then loop around the cart here to the side where the fleeing hyena died, we want to be careful. Just a few meters up the path, we can see what it was likely running towards, a pack of full-blown gnolls currently feasting on more dead bodies. So we better sneak to recover Karlach's javelin before we then approach the dead caravan agent to speak with the dead.
The corpse regards you lifelessly.
No question about identity, so let's ask about what happened first, even though that should be obvious.
Gnolls. Tearing. Biting.
This now allows us to ask if anyone survived the attack.
Rugan fled north.
But we will not inquire further about Rugan, and instead ask where they were going.
Tavern. Hideout. Secret.
A secret hideout, and the letter we just read then point to potentially interesting cargo.
Wizard's Shipment. Chest.
And let's also ask who NF might be to end the conversation.
Boss. Baldur's Gate. The Guild.
The spell's power wanes. You can ask no more questions.
Right, that updates the quest to find that missing shipment. Our best lead at the moment is likely Rugan, who fled north. Unfortunately, that's also where the Gnolls are.
I don't suppose you've any clue where we are in relation to Waterdeep.
From this distance between Elturel and Baldur's Gate, I'd say a long way away.
Ah. That will make getting word to my mother rather tricky. No matter. What she doesn't know can't hurt her. Not at this distance, anyway.
Now, with a quick party change, we bring Gale in for Lae'zel, but just for a few seconds, and climb down the vines here to follow a short path along the river. A few plants grow here, belladonna and myrgrass, and we can also open a crate that fell from the road above. Further down the path, we then spot a curious rock, and moving it with Karlach reveals a hidden bloodstone, a nice bit of treasure. Then we want to switch to Gale as the lead character for one of the easiest to miss inspirations in the game. 2 skeletons lie underneath the bridge here, and we want to make sure that we loot them with him.
These bones are ancient. I wonder who they were.
Insignia. Druidic markings. Must have fell as allies.
Right, so no ability checks, nothing. Simply looting the bodies with Gale will allow him to identify their gear and earn us a point of inspiration. From here we can then climb up the rocks and emerge back on the road. Some crates can be looted here for more supplies, while the bridge we now find ourselves on is the broken one that leads out of the blighted village. We stood on the other end of it not too long ago, if you recall. At this point, we can also already swap Lae'zel back in for Gale. The current party is probably the best we have in terms of pure damage output, and that could be important in just a second, as the path right here gets us close to that pack of gnolls we spotted earlier. What we want to do now is hide in the shadows and creep up with Sylvia, and then we want to wait for a very particular moment, a moment when all 4 gnolls are clustered tightly together. This is when we activate turn-based mode, approach and use Sylvia's bonus action to shoot one of the gnolls. This ensures that we gain a surprise round, and it leaves Sylvia's action to cast a cloud of daggers that will now hit all 4 enemies. And that removes about half the hit points in this pack. Lovely. Let us now take a quick look at what we're dealing with. The Gnoll Hunters here are the ranged enemies, equipped with a bow and capable of rampage, a bonus action bite attack triggered from downing an enemy with a melee strike. Not necessarily perfect synergy, it would be more powerful on the melee-focused Flesh Gnaw here, with slightly more hit points and an AC of 15 instead of 14, otherwise that's your standard melee brute. The Fang of Yinagu then looks like the leader of the pack, but it's not necessarily more powerful than the others. It just has a few special abilities not listed here, and if everything goes according to plan, then we will also not witness them in this fight. To be honest, not a whole lot needs to go right for that to be the case. With Sylvia first in the initiative, she could probably solo this pack at this point, but let's have the rest of the party join in on the fun. Astarion casts Hunter's Mark and waits for his turn. Karlach throws another javelin, and Lae'zel uses her +1 crossbow to also deliver some damage. Then we end Sylvia's turn, and with that the life of the first enemy. Astarion then takes out the second with a sneak attack powered by Hunter's Mark. Enemy number 3 falls to the cloud of daggers as we end his turn. Karlach and Lae'zel have already gone, so it's back to Sylvia and Astarion. Let's have the latter hide and sneak attack once more to take out the final gnoll. And there we go, the full pack has been defeated, time to loot their bodies. Nothing special here, mostly hyena ears. The more valuable stuff is actually on the corpses the gnolls were feasting on, including a letter to the editor of a notorious tabloid criticizing their stance on animal restrictions in Baldur's Gate, the author of the letter seemingly the proud owner of a bear with family in the city. Now, to the northeast here lie the bodies of the hyenas we killed earlier. Meanwhile, there are tracks heading northwest, so let's follow those and pick up an autumn crocus near the charred remains of another hyena. Off in the distance, you can actually see the toll house. The cave entry we stood in a moment ago is also nearby. Meanwhile, we are faced with two paths, one to the left, one to the right, and we want to go right.
That symbol in the blood, what does it mean?
We spot a symbol drawn with blood onto the rocks. That's not the only thing. The ground is shaking, and up ahead another large pack of gnolls has gathered in front of a cave. Among them, clearly the pack leader, a Flind, a powerful gnoll with 110 hit points, very tough to take down and also making all gnolls around it stronger, and there are quite a few of those as you can see. Nonetheless, we approach, from stealth as always, and we want to wait again for the gnoll hunter here to turn around so that we can safely get into striking distance with Sylvia. Then we start off the fight just like the last one, with a bonus action crossbow shot to ensure a surprise round. Our enemy is already slightly injured because of the fire at the cave entrance. Now, the initiative tracker already reveals it. Not only are we fighting 8 enemies, but we also have 2 unexpected allies in this fight. The remains of the caravan we came across earlier. The name Rugan here reveals their association. We then finish Sylvia's opening turn with another cloud of daggers targeting the gnoll and the 2 hyenas on the left here. The rest of the gnolls are 3 hunters and 1 flesh gnawer. The hunters will be our priority because of their ranged attacks. Crucially, we also want to move Sylvia into melee range with the flint before ending her turn. You'll see why in a moment. Up next, we move in with Astarion and cast Hunter's Mark on the already injured gnoll here, and while we wait for his turn in the initiative, Karlach can move in and throw another spear. Raging is unfortunately not possible unless she officially joins combat, and for that she'd need to be detected first. "14 points of damage, lovely. We can now follow up with Lae'zel, who can go for a menacing attack from range on that same enemy. Unfortunately, that misses, and so we follow the initiative order from here on out, ending Sylvia's turn.
Hear that? Someone's fighting the gnolls. We should help.
Don't be a fool, lad. Shut your mouth and keep your head down. Leave the heroics to them that don't value their own skin.
Right, so our allies don't look like they're going to be much help. Let us therefore keep up the pressure. Astarion now goes into hiding and sneak attacks his already marked target. 12 hit points are a manageable task as you can see, and that's 1 hunter down. A bit more damage dealt by the cloud of daggers, and it's Karlach's turn, who can now finally go into a frenzied rage and move onto the high ground. Lae'zel will join her there, and now we can see why Sylvia moved where she did.
With a shock of psychic pain, the pack leader's mind clamps onto yours. You see yourself through her eyes, a pulsing red cluster of organs. Feast. No, the voice has forbidden this meat. Gnolls see your whole world as a meal. This voice is acting as a leash, but it won't hold them for long.
As the symbol glows, power courses through you.
authority.
Right, attacking from stealth, this conversation only triggers if you get into melee range with the Flind, who we can apparently use our tadpole powers on, maybe because she has one inside of her too.
A memory. The beast daubs the symbol of the Absolute on a cave wall in blood. Buried deep, a tadpole struggles to assert control against the ravenous chaos of her mind.
And before we use our powers to direct the course of her actions, let us find out how a powerful gnoll like her was infected.
You see drow and goblins restraining her, a mind flayer reaching out. And then the voice, bringing order. Eating this meat was forbidden, but it would lead her to a feast.
Now then, we essentially have two options here, making her attack the two people in the cave, or making her attack the other gnolls. I don't think it's too difficult of a decision. Turning her against the pack is obviously the better choice if you're aiming to make the fight easier, and with a DC of only 2, success is virtually guaranteed.
Sensing your presence, the Gnoll's tadpole writhes in ecstasy, echoing your command. Its host will feast on gnoll flesh to control the hunger, to keep her teeth from your throat. Your mind lurches, reeling suddenly as if bitten.
Alright, there she goes, one-hitting one of the hunters and clearly showing why we do not want her as an enemy. The two hyenas affected by Sylvia's Cloud of Dagger have also already died, by the way, so let us now focus on the last gnoll hunter with a slashing flourish from range. 26 damage, that's enough for the kill. Sylvia goes invisible and can now use her bonus action to shoot the Fang of Yeenoghu inside the Cloud of Daggers. A crit for 8 damage ensures that the effect will take it down before it can strike. The Flesh Gnawer, meanwhile, has no other option but to dash to even get close to participating. That puts it into range of Astarion, who can Hunter's Mark it, go into stealth mode and strike with a sneak attack. A lucky critical hit for 36 points of damage already takes it out, so no need for the rest of our party to get involved, and if we now end our turn, the fight will end too, prompting another conversation with the Flind.
She is still ravenous, her mind a hungry pit. The flesh of her pack wasn't enough to satisfy her.
Now, in anticipation of this, I recommend putting your guidance caster not too far away from the main character. What we want to do in order to obtain some loot here is neither to fight the Flind nor to drive her away, but to make her feast on herself, a DC 10 wisdom check, not trivial for Sylvia, but with guidance hopefully doable. And we get lucky, she rolls an 18 for a total of 21.
Her tadpole responds, thrashing violently, and the fragile tissue of her brain tears and splits. You taste the blood in her throat, feel it pooling in the cavity of her skull. But she still resists.
Now, a command like this, of course, requires more than just a simple DC of 10. A second wisdom check is required, this one a DC 15. I recommend saving up some inspiration points for this one. As you can see, we fail on the first try, but we have a full stack of points to spend, so let's roll again.
Your tadpole wriggles, contented, as she tears out her own throat.
And there we go. With approval from Astarion, the Flind drops dead, and we're in for yet another conversation.
By the gods, you're a sweet sight. Are any of my crew still alive out there?
So, we meet Rugan, not exactly a huge help in this fight, but who can blame him? The rest of his crew is indeed all blood and guts on the road.
Damn it.
I guess that's a no. Risen Road's more dangerous than ever. You're the first friendly face we've seen since Eltergard.
And indeed, Eltergard is not exactly around the corner, so let's ask where they're going, instead of threatening them to hand over their goods.
We're bound for Baldur's Gate. Got some cargo to deliver. But we've a stop to make along the way.
Now that sounds interesting, but don't worry, he will tell us more about it even if we ask about the goods instead. After all, what we've learned about them so far sounded pretty intriguing.
Trinkets for some rich tosser in Baldur's Gate. He gets his shiny baubles. We get a handful of taranths.
Taranths are the currency of a merchant network called the Zhentarim. Led by the mysterious Paragost of Darkhold, their dealings are far from scrupulous.
Succeeding the history check unlocks a unique dialogue option then. We can now tell him that we already know his cargo is more than just baubles.
You know who we are. Very clever. And you probably also know it's not smart to interfere with Zhent business. This is the point when a clever lass like you accepts my gratitude and walks away.
And, well, as tempting as it may be to now coerce him into handing over the goods, we do in fact want to follow his recommendation and walk away. In the long run, this will benefit us more, believe me.
Listen, you look like you know how to handle yourself. You should meet my associates. We've got our own drinking spot by the tavern. Invitation only. Tell the fellow on the door. Little Serpent, Long Shadow. He'll take good care of you.
And there we are. We obtained the password for a nearby tavern and remain in the Zhentarim's good graces for now. That might prove useful, but for the moment let's get to looting. There are several items of interest in the area, starting with the speedy reply on the dead Caravan agent here, a scimitar giving its wielder momentum after a successful hit. On the body of the Flind, we then find the Shattered Flail, a +2 mace allowing its wielder to regain hit points on hits, but also potentially driving them mad if they don't hit, so best utilized with care. We can also grab the Tadpole to add it to our collection, and then loot the other bodies, always making sure to reclaim Karlach's spears and javelins. Up where the Flesh Gnaw started then, we can find 2 batches of balsam. From here we can once again overlook the toll house, and you can actually climb up here directly from it if you want to bypass the 2 smaller fights. Another autumn crocus and balsam then grow a little further down the path, and in order to fully harvest everything, we now return all the way to that scorched hyena and take the path on the left side we initially passed by. Here we can snatch more balsam and also find some high ground that would make for a good ambush spot against the gnolls below, while the remaining harvestables along the path are autumn crocus, balsam and daggerroot. And at this point it is then time to head into the cave.
I don't feel lucky. The rest of our crew's half digested, and you're still alive. That's lucky.
Now prepare to hear this voice line a few more times as we begin to explore the surroundings. Our first challenge is navigating the burning patches on the ground near the cave entry. Of course, we could simply throw water onto them to extinguish them, but carefully sending our party through one by one also works just fine.
How you holding up, Rugan?
I'm fine. And so's the chest, more importantly.
Something over there.
Sylvia then spots the chest that Rugan just mentioned, but as you can see it is marked as owned, so taking it would be a crime. The same goes for all other items in this spot.
Well, lad, it's our lucky day after all.
I don't feel lucky.
The rest of our crew's half digested, and you're still alive. That's lucky.
All other goods in the cave, however, are free to be taken. A heavy crossbow, for example, and some drinks inside of the barrel here. Then we come across an abandoned campsite that we can thoroughly loot as well. The 2 backpacks contain the main items of interest, but there are a few other bits and bobs around, including 2 bottles of Ithbank near the campfire. Once everything, including all the bedrolls, has been grabbed, we want to split the party. To avoid having to use a spell or potion, we will do this next part only with Lae'zel. together with Karlach, the only one in our current party who can jump far enough to reach over to the other side here. However, Lae'zel has the higher dexterity modifier of the two, and that's important because there is a locked chest down here that we want her to lockpick. Luckily, the DC is only 5, so by giving herself guidance, all but a natural 1 will succeed. And she shows an aptitude for cracking locks, allowing ourselves to grab a few more valuables. Then we can jump back, regroup, and continue our tour. Another security mechanism is right ahead.
Traps. How considerate.
This here, a poison mine, and in order to get to the chest behind it, we want to disarm it. This time, however, we can send in our specialist to take care of the job. Let's pump in guidance just to see how far we can take this. I fully expect Astarion to get a roll above 30 at some point soon. For now, a 25 is more than enough to disarm the trap, but the lock needs to be picked too, and this time a 17 on the die means a result over 30 is incoming. We can then help ourselves to some gold and Reason's Grasp, a fantastic piece of gear for barbarians, granting them 15 temporary hit points whenever they end their rage. This could actually enable Karlach to take the occasional hit, even though we would have to give up the braces of defense for it, and thus lower her armor class by 2. Now, once this spot has been thoroughly looted, we head over to the next one, climbing down the rocks and then back up. Although there's not much to find here, just a bit of clutter, so it doesn't take long until we climb back down and approach Olly, the other caravan agent.
I'll be glad when we're out of this bloody cave.
He doesn't have much to say, so let's keep moving. There is only one area of this cave we have not yet explored. To get to it, we need to jump the broken bridge here, and then, with alcohol all over the ground and lots of explosive barrels in the area, it might be best to extinguish our torch. Those barrels of fire wine could then make for an interesting addition to our arsenal. So with Lae'zel and Karlach, our two strongest party members, we're going to pick them all up, and we can also loot the backpack on the ground here. After picking up another barrel, we then make an interesting discovery.
Easy. This place is hungry for blood.
There's a tripwire on the ground, a giant boulder not too far away from it, in combination with the firewine barrels, a potentially deadly trap. Luckily, we have Astarion to disarm it, the DC here only 10, that shouldn't be too difficult for him. And even on the roll of 4, he ends up with a 17, allowing our party to continue. However, Lae'zel, failing another perception check here, immediately reveals that there is something more ahead. Luckily, the rest of the party is more perceptive.
Be careful. There are traps about.
Now, finding and disarming these two traps is actually important, not only for our survival, but also to earn another point of inspiration. Good thing we just spent one, so we have room for one more. And there we go, Karlach gains her first inspiration of the playthrough. The description here also revealing that this was apparently formerly a bandit camp. However, by the looks of it, it has been deserted for a while now. Now, with Astarion's Firebolt cantrip, we can quickly destroy the wooden barricade over here. This ensures we don't have to use any acrobatics to get back out of the cave. Along the way, we can pick up 2 more barrels of fire wine. And with that, we have now made it back to the cave entrance where we more or less started the episode at, and I think we have now earned ourselves some time to rest back at camp. And after recruiting her last episode, I think it's time for our first proper conversation with Karlach.
Hey, soldier.
As you can see, we have plenty of dialogue options to choose from here, and first of all, we want to ask about the infernal engine in Karlach's heart, specifically about the fact that it is burning up.
That's the short of it. Bloody thing's been in overdrive since I left Avernus.
Which then brings us to the obvious follow-up question: how did she end up with a heart like this in the first place?
The year, 10 air. The place, sleepy little town called Baldur's Gate. Our hero, Karlach, a knock-kneed delinquent from the outer city with everything to give and nothing to lose. I was a kid looking for a way to fill my days and make some cash when I fell into the wrong crowd. Worked for a guy I respected. A lot. Turns out the feeling wasn't mutual. Through the jigs and the reels, he made a deal with Zariel behind my back. You know Zariel, right? Archdevil of Avernus. She put this thing in my chest and set me to work. Well, to war. I learned quick how to stay alive. And the engine served me when it came to killing devils. 10 years of that. The stories I could tell.
Well, no time like the present. Let's encourage her to tell them.
I'll mete out the best ones bit by bit, so you always have a reason to keep me around. Clever, right?
Now, earlier she mentioned someone she was working for, someone she respected, someone who eventually ended up betraying her, selling her out to Zariel.
Guy named Gortash. Politician. Inventor. One of these wheeler-dealer types who seems to have a finger in every pie. I guess I was naive to think everything he got up to was above board. What did I know? I saw a job. A good job. With people I liked. Doing work I was good at. Sometimes I'm jealous of that girl. Ugh, to feel so invincible again.
Now at this point, we've learned a lot about how her situation came to be, but what is still unclear is what exactly that infernal engine does. What was the reason for Zariel to have it installed?
Gives me energy. Power. But you've seen it in action. Very hard to control. If I'm excited at all, angry, nervous, delighted, enticed, I burn hot. Hot enough to burn anyone who gets close.
Now that does sound exhausting, but let's not judge too quickly. We've learned from other companions that it's best to keep an open mind. So how does Karlach herself feel about it?
Agonizing. Gods, what I wouldn't give for a hug. A pat, anything. You've never met anyone so desperate for a hug as this one right here. Pathetic perhaps, but true. It's my lot to bear, and I bear it badly. Ah well, can't have it all, can you? Not today, at least.
Right, this ends the conversation, but there were plenty more options, so let's hop right back in.
What's the story?
At this point, we now want to ask about killing devils. After all, we may or may not have one suspiciously interested in our fate.
Depends on the type. Ice devils hate an inferno, but that's an easy one. Orthons love projectiles. What they don't love is getting their bombs lobbed right back in their faces. Demons, on the other hand, every demon is absolutely singular. You can't ever think you've got them typed out. Sharp instincts, sharp weapons, and a knack for improvisation. That's the only way to survive them. Anyway, what were we talking about?
Well, let's stick with the topic of infernal lore just a little while longer. Maybe Karlach can give us a bit more of a first-hand report about the city of Elturel falling into Avernus.
Wasn't all that long ago. I never knew the whole of how and why, but I remember the devils slavering with delight. I should have looked after the Elturans more. Gone out of my way to make sure they were all right. The long and short of it was, I didn't want to risk my neck. I let them get on with the nightmare, same as I had to. But Avernus is no place for decent folk. I'm glad they got out. So glad.
Right, change of topic, let's ask about her plans for the future, now that the Paladins of Tyr have been removed.
First things first, I need to get this engine tuned up. Thing's powerful, but it's been feeling volatile ever since I left the Hells. Can't be too hard to find an infernal mechanic round here, right?
Well, we covered that topic already in our initial conversation with her. Up next, let's now go with the two Dark Urge specific options. Maybe she's got an idea why we've lost our memories.
I don't think so. At least, I still remember everything. In more detail than I wish. But, as for what's going on in your mind, and maybe in mine, I'm certain there are answers out there. We'll find them together.
Right, no surprise there to get no answer. Let's see how she reacts to our bloodlust then, a topic that she's probably somewhat familiar with.
Well, look. You've said it, right out loud. That takes guts. The guts you'll need to change. Or at least make sure you're channeled in the right direction. I've got enough enemies who could do with a good bloodletting, you know?
Right, and finally, a more personal question that will eventually end the conversation. This is not exactly where we thought we'd end up, and I can't imagine it's much different for her.
Funny you should ask. I was just thinking about what would have become of us without that Nautiloid. I mean, I know where I'd be. Trapped in Avernus still, with the Blade of Frontiers on my tail. But what about you?
Well, all 4 dialogue options here are fitting to some extent. However, we are very much in the process of playing a Dark Urge character trying to overcome her urges, so perhaps it's best if we tell her that we don't actually want to remember anything.
Lucky you. Sometimes I think I'd be better off indulging in a bit of light oblivion. Well, we may as well make some good memories mixed in with the body horror, huh?
Alright, so that concludes our first lengthy chat with Karlach, but many more are still to come. For now, let's end the day and transition to nighttime, which will bring about another interesting event.
Hellsfire. She's coming.
Wyll, you've been naughty. And you know what happens when you're naughty.
Gods damn it. Anyone but her.
Right, our nightly visitor seems to have us at a disadvantage, and from their initial reactions they will probably not like us calling her a luscious thing, but we do need to find out who the hell we're dealing with.
Wyll, you absolute stinker! You kept me a secret? Time to let the Hellcat out of the bag. Call me Mizora. I'm Wyll's patron, the fount of his power. My pet's been unruly, and his leash needs a yank. We had a deal, Wyll. But Karlach's still breathing.
I've taken more pleasant shits than you, Mizora. And at least those can be buried after.
That's no kind of talk for a lady. By the way, Karlach, Zariel sends her regards.
You told me! Devils only! She's a tiefling, not a monster!
How precious. The little pupster's found his bark. Clause G, Section 9. Target shall be limited to the infernal, the demonic, the heartless, and the soulless. Karlach meets the criteria by virtue of having no heart.
Well, the contract with a warlock's patron is a tricky thing, it seems. However, we certainly do not appreciate her putting Karlach's name in her mouth, and we can tell her so to gain some approval from the party.
Don't you worry. That ship has long sailed the Styx. But a defiant pup must still pay his price. To wit.
Wyll burns in the fires of Avernus. The lightning storms of Dis strike his flesh. His soul passes through each layer of the hells, gaining their essence and their torment.
That's better.
What the hells have you done?
A promise broken, a price paid. You know the terms. Get used to the new form, pet. There's no going back. Some magic even I can't undo. Now, let's see how the frontiers fare without their precious blade. Karlach, Keep an eye on him, would you? I'll be keeping mine on you. Oh, and Will, don't forget, our pact still stands. Ta-ta.
Right, so that happened. Not entirely unexpected, however, as Will did warn us about the possibility of a nightly visit. Either way, Karlach, Will, and Astarion now wish to speak to us. Let's begin with Karlach, since she's closest by.
I'll be honest, soldier. I'm reeling. Will hardly knows me, but he chose my life over his. Been a long time since someone stuck their neck out for me like that.
Now I think fostering the mutual respect of our party members could go a long way towards achieving our goals, so let's agree with Karlach and call Will a good man, maybe even the best of us.
You can say that again. When he was chasing me through Avernus, I thought he was just another sad merc. How wrong I was.
Right, so apart from that, Karlach does not have that much to say, at least not initially.
What can I do you for?
One point we do not want to overlook, though, is that she seemed rather familiar with Mizora.
We were both part of Zariel's inner circle. Her by choice, me by force. In the grand scheme of things, I'm inconsequential to Zariel. Sure, I've got the engine, but I wasn't even her strongest fighter. But she favored me like a child favors a captive pet. Mizora envied the attention, I suppose. I'm sure when Zariel gave her the order to hunt me down, Mizora was delighted.
This also brings up a very important follow-up question. What are the odds that Mizora will keep coming after her?
I don't know. You'd think she'd have more important things to do. Devils and their pride.
And, well, one would assume that that pride played a large part in Karlach wanting to leave the Hells.
No kidding. The fighting, the chaos, the betrayal. It had the makings of a good stage show, but I did not want to be one of the players.
Right, now that is in fact all we can get out of her at this point, so let's leave and turn our attention to Will, who's certainly a bit more directly affected by Mizora's visit.
God's damn her straight back to the Hells. Just look at me. I did what was right, and Mizora made me pay for it. I'd be hunting devils and demons, she said. Traitors and hypocrites, heartless evils of all sorts, but not Zariel's victims. Not innocent tieflings.
Warlock pacts tend to be unforgiving from what you know of them. Will was lucky he didn't face a more severe punishment.
Now, succeeding the Arcana check here unlocks dialogue option number 5. It is perhaps also the least judgmental one. Nonetheless, there is truth to it. Will certainly got lucky he got away with just horns on his head.
I'd count my lucky stars for it, but I reckon luck is on holiday. I'm only alive because my patron still has use for me. It's Mizora who grants me the power to conjure armor and cast eldritch blasts. Before I was infected, I could even call hell beasts and summon festering clouds. But I promise you, every thrust of my blade and every flame I sparked was for the good of the coast.
Now, both option 1 and 3 will get him to reveal a bit more about his pact. However, only option 3 earns his approval, so obviously that's the one we'll go with.
The one little question that put me out of house and home. I can't utter the terms or circumstances of the pact. I can tell you most all else, but the pact, I'm forbidden, unless Mizora permits it. But I'll say this. The moment I pacted myself to Mizora, I have not regretted for a heartbeat. It was my proudest deed. It was worth the sacrifice. All I can give you on that is my solemn word.
Now, once again, the conversation ends prematurely, but we do have more to talk about.
Well met.
At this point, we can earn more approval points by asking Will how it feels to be a devil.
It's said that anyone who bathes in the river of blood emerges as one born anew. It's a lot like that, I imagine. I feel the weight of these horns on my head, curling upwards like a mammoth's tusks. I feel these ridges snaking down my neck, not to mention a few bumps and prongs in unmentionable places. But I haven't seen my reflection just yet. Be my mirror. What do you see?
Now, it probably won't go over well to call him a freak of nature. A handsome devil, however, that I'm sure he'd like to hear, and who knows where that kind of tone eventually leads us.
I can't tell if you're being silly or serious. I'll accept the flattery either way. I suppose I'll grow used to the new me, horns and all. The people will see a curiosity, maybe even a beast hungry for their souls. But I will slay their monsters, keep them safe, and one day they will see the Blade of Frontiers again.
Now, there is one more thing that we probably should talk about. As useful as the gifts of Wyll's pack have been, in the long term it might be better to get out of it, considering who he made it with.
A possibility that's kept me awake countless nights. But I don't have a clue where to start, other than play her games and play by the rules. That's the only language devils listen to.
Now, I think Sylvia is smart enough to know that Wyll cannot just walk away from it, nor can he straight up attack his patron, but maybe there's a loophole we can exploit.
There could well be. She has the blighted thing. What I know of it is simply what has engraved itself upon my memory. My contract is very clear. I can bring Mizora no harm. She'll have to let me out of my pact willingly. The only way out is if I can out-bargain her. We're standing here with nothing but the clothes on our backs and the worms in our heads.
Well, especially those worms in our heads have proved very useful in the past, so let's show ourselves optimistic that we can get him out of it to earn the final approval points of the conversation.
We can, I'm sure of it. How glad I am that you see me as more than my patron's pet.
Right, 2 down, 1 more left to go. I think it's time that we now speak to Astarion.
There you are. I was just thinking about you. And that delicious moment we shared the other night.
Well, he's obviously talking about the moment when he bit us, and let's not brush him off entirely.
The very same. I've had this condition for 2 centuries, but truth be told, you were my first. In all these years, I've only ever fed on beasts. Drinking the blood of thinking creatures is a different thing entirely. You were delectable. And now I can't help but wonder how the others taste.
Well, I think we feared this could happen, so let's try to discourage those thoughts, for the moment with a slight nudge, and not with the threat of killing him.
Alas. It doesn't hurt to ponder the question, though. Take Gale, for example. He strikes me as someone whose blood is rich, refined, like well-aged brandy. But the Gith? What in the hells would she taste like?
And why not? Let's play along. I do picture Lae'zel as someone who might be a bit tough to swallow.
Oh. Well, that sounds very appealing. I'm almost convinced.
And at this point, the only convincing to be done here is that all of this is still in the realm of theory.
Absolutely. A mere thought experiment. So, in the spirit of theoretical questions, if you had to take a bite from one of them, who would it be?
Now, for this question, we do want to pick someone as an answer, otherwise we'd lose out on approval. And let's go with the option that is unexpected and perhaps slightly flirtatious too, Astarion himself.
Oh, I'm flattered. Who knew you had such taste? Unfortunately, all this talk is getting me hungry. I better find something I can actually sink my teeth into.
And again, no need to be mean here, for now he seems to have his urges under control, so let's simply wish him good hunting.
There's nothing that tasty lurking out in the woods, but I'll make do. Sweet dreams?
Well, those dreams will have to wait just a little while longer. While we are now going to bed to have a long rest, we won't exactly be sleeping immediately.
It seems to be the perfect night to spend a little time together. Just you and I. Assuming you haven't changed your mind, of course.
And no, we haven't, otherwise we wouldn't have let it come to this in the first place. let's have her lead the way and go on what is very clearly going to be our first date.
You made it. Come here. Sit with me.
Now, we're not going to jump in head first here or confront her for thinking we wouldn't show. Let's show ourselves eager and committed. I'm sure Shadowheart will appreciate it.
So eager. I'm surprised it took you this long. Well, to begin, I think a toast is in order. Any suggestions?
Now, victory and survival seem like rather martial answers, and we don't want to friendzone her either, so let's toast to us, whatever that means.
Bold. What does us entail? I suppose I'll find out. To us. Now tell me something about yourself. And no tadpoles, dragons, marauding goblins, or anything like that. Something about you.
Right, now this is the first time that the roles are reversed. Normally it's us asking the questions. Let's show ourselves a bit surprised at that, of course, in a positive way.
Fishing for blackmail material, that's all. Go on. I insist.
Now, this is where the problem of memory loss comes back into play. However, there is an easy way around it. Just make her go first. Sylvia might just be persuasive enough to pull it off.
Don't laugh, but I'm not quite sure I have anything to share. When you worship Shard, secrecy is everything. We'll sacrifice our own memories when ordered to. A lot of the little things, they're lost to me right now.
Now, dialogue options number 3 and 4 here sound needlessly confrontational, while at the same time we probably also don't want to bring up the thought of her memories never coming back, so let us instead remind her that she already told us about a few of those little things, and that we kept those in mind.
I did. And you remembered. You're sweet. There's still plenty of wine, and the whole night is ahead of us. Nearly light. The others will be awake soon.
Well, soon is not now, I suppose, so maybe we can stay here just a little while longer and see where it takes us.
Another moment won't kill them, I suppose. Well, it might, but let's take that risk. Thank you for last night.
Well, to be honest, it did seem like a lovely affair, so perhaps we can repeat it sometime soon. That is, if Shadowheart is up for it as well.
Me too.
She trails off. You read an invitation in her eyes.
Right, we succeed an insight check and read an invitation that we are of course going to accept. Don't worry though, this is not going to lock us into anything permanent just yet.
That didn't hurt, did it?
Well, when it comes to hurt, I suppose she's the expert. The most we felt was perhaps a little tingle.
I'd like to think that would have happened anyway. Let's head back, if we must.
Alright, there we are, on the following morning after a romantic night out with Shadowheart, who, somewhat unsurprising I would say, now wishes to speak to us. Let's go over there and see what she has to say.
All's well, I hope.
And, well, after the events of last night, how could it not be? It seems, though, like that is exactly what she wants to talk about.
No. I just wanted to see how you felt after the night we spent together. When we talked and kissed.
Now, we've done it once before, let's do it again and reverse the question back onto her. She brought it up, so what's her stance on the entire thing?
I can't recall the last time I shared so much with someone. Maybe I never did before. It meant a lot to me. You mean a lot to me. And that was before the kiss.
Right, knowing how she feels, we can now give the answer that we would have given anyway. Once again, stating our interest in pursuing this relationship does not lock us out of having romantically flavored interactions with other party members, but it does keep the door open on having something more lasting with Shadowheart.
I hope so too. Though I'm not sure what kind of courtship will be afforded, given all that we're facing. But if you want to see where this goes, I do as well.
Now, there is one new dialogue option here that we could pick to talk a bit more about our relationship. However, for the time being, I think we've done enough talking. Let's just see where this goes. After a romantic night with some wine and a kiss, I don't think there is too much need to discuss everything in detail. So we'll leave it at that, as a new day begins in camp and a new chapter of this adventure awaits. What that next chapter might entail, well, I suppose you'll have to wait until the next episode to find that out. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.